Limbo. Noun. An uncertain period of awaiting a decision or resolution. An intermediate state or condition. For the Jewish people, 5784 was the year of being in limbo. I struggle to summarize a year none of us could have imagined, a year in which the Jewish people changed profoundly, even if it is not yet entirely clear how. A year, notwithstanding the fact that Rosh Hashanah was last week, is far from over. For all those Israeli families whose loved ones were affected on October 7th, I think about the limbo found in the verse from Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of deepest darkness. For lots of families, it is still the day after October 7th. While this week, many of them have commemorated yortzites, hardly believing that a year has gone, they remain in that valley, wondering how they will pick up the pieces after their losses. They are the lucky ones. Many other families wait in excruciating darkness, wondering about the fate of their kidnapped loved ones. But even they are able to see light and count days. Then there are the 101 hostages who have lost track of days because the lights in the tunnels do not distinguish day from night. Time is measured by the shift between despair and courage and hope and when they will get their next meal. They are in the darkest limbo. For Israel as a society, I think of the limbo found in the wisdom of Ecclesiastes. There is a time for everything under the sun, a time to live and a time to die. Israeli soldiers and their families live every day precariously hanging between those. A time for wailing and a time for dancing. When will Israelis actualize the phrase you find throughout the country, on billboards, on t-shirts, on bumper stickers? Od nirkod, we will dance again. A time for embracing and a time to refrain from embracing. Of course, our Israeli brothers and sisters want peace. They would like nothing more than to embrace their regional neighbors and receive that embrace in return. But when you know that that embrace will come with a knife in your back, I don't fault Israeli society for having no stomach for embracing. I pray that soon they will come upon the circumstances when embracing will be warranted and welcomed, and a time for war will give way to a time of peace. In the meantime, we are caught in the middle. We are in limbo. For us as American Jews, I think about the limbo I am experiencing that is found in between those famous phrases from Pirkei Avot. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I am only for myself, what am I? We American Jews have prided ourselves on not only being for ourselves. We believe in the prophetic calling of universal social justice commitments and have a history of involvement in those issues. But following October 7th, when we found ourselves painfully standing alone or even outside of circles we had long so cultivated, there has been a recalibration of the balance between not being for myself and only being for myself. Many Jews, me included, are circling our emotional wagons and saying to ourselves and others, yes, I do care about the innocent civilians in Gaza who will suffer and who are themselves hostages of Hamas. Yes, my heart feels for them, but right now, my own people are bleeding. I wish that I had unlimited emotional strength and time, but I don't. And so at this point, I choose to focus on my own people's incalculable losses. We are in that space of limbo between the tremendous pain of October 7th and all the despair and anger that go with it, and the challenge of not knowing when that healing and wholeness will eventually come. The truth is that being in the midst of the High Holy Day season gives us a helpful frame to the feeling that we are sitting in emotional limbo. To understand this, I want to teach you two words, Hebrew words, din and rachamim. Din is judgment. Rachamim, or as your grandparents probably said it, rachmanas, is compassion. These serve as the bookends of our High Holy Day experience. Rosh Hashanah is considered to be Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. It's a time for us to do that deep, soul-searching, necessary work of self-judgment. We know we need to acknowledge our sins and shortcomings, get rid of bad habits, and do the necessary work to ensure that we are better human beings in the year to come. Yom Kippur is the moment when we seek divine rachamim, divine compassion, mercy, and forgiveness. In her book, Sacred Therapy, psychotherapist Estelle Frankel writes, every year during the High Holy Days, Jews engage in communal healing rites of forgiveness and atonement that are aimed at moving the cosmic energies from judgment to compassion. The cycle begins on Rosh Hashanah and culminates 10 days later on Yom Kippur. We use the quality of din on Rosh Hashanah to judge ourselves and make needed changes in ourselves. This constructive use of din, of judgment, enables us to become worthy of being forgiven and pardoned by God on Yom Kippur. The sounding of the shofar, which resembles the sound of a person weeping and wailing, is intended to waken us from our spiritual slumber. Crying out like a woman in labor, the shofar beckons us to give birth to our new selves. In fact, according to Kabbalah, the shofar, with its narrow shape at one end and broad at the other, symbolizes that movement from the constricted space of din, judgment, to the expansive space of rachamim, compassion and forgiveness. A verse from Psalm 118, which we recite before the shofar is sounded, is suggestive of that movement. From the narrow places I called out to you. God, answer me in divine expanse. While the Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur period is seen as humanity's move towards God, I'm more interested in the move within ourselves. From din to rachamim. What is my role to judge and execute judgment against myself and others? And when or do I need to demonstrate compassion for myself or for others? On Monday morning, I sat with a group of our grandparents, giving them some space to share their feelings about October 7th. One father confessed that since October 7th, he's been angry, just angry. And as a result, he's worried about what he's teaching, what he's modeling for his child. I sympathized with him. I told him what I said to all of you last week. I'm so angry at Hamas and Hezbollah, the Houthis and Iran, that I just want to bomb the crap out of Gaza and Beirut and Tehran and Yemen. I know that I am in a space of anger and judgment, and that it is justified and necessary. Sidebar, let me just be clear on that. Okay, stemming from the Talmudic concept of a rodef, okay, somebody who pursues you. If somebody rises up to pursue and kill you, you have the right to kill that person first. I support Israel's right and responsibility to go after Hamas. Therefore, right now, I and the state of Israel are in a place of im ein ani li mili. If I am not for myself, no one else will be. But I also know that I need to get to ukshe'ani la'atzmi ma'ani. If I am only for myself, what kind of person am I? I need to eventually be in a place of compassion. And I know that the overwhelming majority of Israeli society is in that same place. Nobody likes collateral damage. Nobody wants there to be a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We are in between. But perhaps sitting in between is okay and even helpful. So much of what we talk about is either about being in the traumatic event or being out of trauma. Even in daily life, I don't think we need to look very far to recognize that we are frequently existing in the space between justice and compassion. What we start to recognize is that the work happens in the in-between. We know this instinctively from our own tradition. We didn't go directly from Egyptian slavery to freedom in the land of Israel. Rather, there was that in-between, in the desert. And if you'll pardon my making a little play on words, when we are in the Hebrew word for desert, midbar, we are, in effect, in the middle bar, in that dash between two dates, between two times. And it's not always a comfortable or easy place to be. So what is the work we must do? Well, Judaism provides guidance for that. I love the wonderful verse from the book of Micah in which God commands, do justice, love loving kindness, and walk humbly with your God. To do justice means to take specific action. It's something like a court case. Judgment is necessary, but when it's finished, it's finished. By contrast, loving kindness is unbounded by time, situation, or relationship. Embracing loving kindness means you are not only generous-hearted, but you love being that way. This approach to life can protect you from staying stuck in your anger and your hurt, lashing out vengefully and holding grudges. It means that even in the face of strong emotions and the need for justice, you can reserve a part of your mind, a part of your heart for caring interest in another person. Let me offer some just basic examples. It was okay for me to recognize the necessity of punishing my children when they did something wrong. It never really happened. That's because two of them are here, so I can say that. One of them hopefully is listening. It's okay for me to recognize that I needed to punish my children when they did something wrong, while at the same time unconditionally loving them. I sometimes need to gently rebuke a staff member, while at the same time I get to encourage and support their professional growth. I can firmly say no to an unreasonable request from a congregant and still feel bad about it. Then we come to the third phrase in the Micah verse, walk humbly with your God. For those times when we feel stuck in limbo, when our resources feel depleted, when we recognize our own limits, we can find support by tapping into something greater than ourselves. I'm not a big fan of the notion of putting ourselves in God's hands, but walking with God is about recognizing that we are not alone and that we can lean on God. Walking with God is about humbly placing greater values above our personal desires. Paradoxically, living like this promotes inner strength. Cultivating a sense that there are things beyond us can make us less vulnerable to the insecurities that arise when we are hurt, and in turn, make it easier to move from judgment to compassion. My friends, so many of us feel stuck in the in-between. And yet, consciously being in limbo may have the greatest potential to teach us the patience, endurance, and reflection we need to move us from judgment to compassion. The time we spend wandering in the desert may prove to be our most power-packed, strengthening, faith-building time of life, even if we do not fully recognize it until we have passed through. 10 days into 5785, and I wish I could tell you what will be or when we will move out of limbo. Even in the absence of that certainty, over the next 24 hours, let me encourage you to simply reflect on the space that you are in now. And tomorrow night, when we hear the shofar's evocative cry, let it be open to a place inside of us that is more gentle, more compassionate, and more forgiving. Gamar Chatima Tova. And then may you be sealed for a year of goodness.